The transport shuttle touched down with a soft hum, and Katie Morgan took her first breath of recycled alien air. The Galactic Coalition Training Academy stretched before her like something out of a dream. Towers of black glass rose toward a purple sky. Bridges of light connected buildings that floated without any visible support. Everything was clean, precise, and utterly foreign. She was one of 12 humans chosen for the first interspecies combat integration program. 3 years ago, humanity had made first contact with the coalition. Now, they were trying to prove they belonged among the stars. The program was supposed to be a gesture of goodwill, a chance to show that humans could work alongside species who had traveled between galaxies for thousands of years. Katie adjusted the strap of her bag and followed the other humans off the shuttle. She had been a park ranger back in Montana before all of this. She knew how to track animals, survive in the wilderness, and handle emergencies. But nothing in her life had prepared her for this. The academy was located on a moon called Vareth Prime. It was neutral territory, belonging to no single species. Warriors from 37 different worlds trained here. Some of those species had been part of the coalition since before humans had learned to make fire. A tall figure waited for them at the end of the landing platform. Commander Zeltos was a Kethvari, one of the most respected warrior species in the known universe. His skin was covered in fine blue scales that caught the light like sapphires. He had 4 arms, each one thick with muscle, and his eyes were solid gold without any visible pupils. He looked at the humans the way someone might look at insects crawling across their floor. "Welcome to the Academy," Zelthos said. His voice was deep and rumbling, translated into English by a small device attached to his collar. "You will be assessed today. Our scanners will measure your physical capabilities, your threat potential, and your psychological profile. Based on these readings, you will be assigned a training tier." Katie glanced at her fellow humans. There was Danny Marsh, a former Marine with broad shoulders and a calm expression. Beside him stood Lisa Cortez, a mixed martial arts champion who had won 3 world titles before signing up for the program. The other 9 were equally impressive, athletes, soldiers, and fighters of every kind. Katie was the only one who had never been in a real fight. She had wondered more than once why they had chosen her. Her trainers back on Earth had never given her a straight answer. They just said she had tested well and left it at that. Commander Zelthos led them into a massive circular chamber. The walls were lined with observation platforms where dozens of aliens watched with curious eyes. Katie saw species she recognized from the briefing materials. The insectoid Vraxi with their clicking mandibles. The tall, willowy Salanthi with skin like polished silver. The squat, rock-like Gorvians who barely moved at all. In the center of the chamber floated a silver orb about the size of a basketball. It pulsed with soft light, humming quietly as it drifted through the air. "The scanner will evaluate each of you," Zeltos announced. "Step forward when called." Danny Marsh went first. He walked to the center of the room and stood at attention. The silver orb floated toward him and circled his body slowly. It hummed louder for a moment, and then a holographic display appeared in the air beside it. Alien script scrolled across the projection, but a translation appeared below. Classification, low threat, Tier 6. A murmur ran through the alien observers. Katie did not know exactly what the tiers meant, but she could tell from their tone that Tier 6 was not impressive. Lisa Cortez went next. The scanner circled her for longer, its hum rising and falling as it took its measurements. The display flickered to life. Classification, minimal threat, Tier 7. More murmurs. Some of the aliens actually laughed. Tier 7 was clearly the bottom of the scale. One by one, the humans stepped forward. One by one, they received their classifications. The highest any of them achieved was Tier 5. Most were rated Tier 6 or 7. The watching aliens grew more relaxed with each assessment, their initial curiosity fading into something like boredom. Then, it was Katie's turn. She walked to the center of the chamber, her boots echoing on the smooth floor. She did not feel nervous exactly. She felt the way she always felt before something important happened, alert, focused, ready for anything. The silver orb drifted toward her. It circled her once, twice, 3 times. Its hum grew louder, then louder still. The orb stopped moving. Its light flickered from silver to yellow to orange to red, and then it screamed. The sound was unlike anything Katie had ever heard. It was a shriek of pure alarm that echoed off the walls and made every alien in the room flinch. Red warning lights flooded the chamber. Emergency barriers slammed down over the exits. Katie stood perfectly still, unsure what she had done wrong. The holographic display appeared beside the scanner. The alien script scrolled by so fast it was almost a blur. And then the translation appeared. 3 words in bright red letters. Do not engage. The chamber exploded into chaos. Guards rushed forward from every direction, weapons drawn and aimed at Katie. Commanders shouted orders in a dozen different languages. The other humans backed away, their faces pale with confusion and fear. Commander Zelthos raised all 4 of his arms and bellowed a command that silenced everyone. "Hold your positions," he ordered. Then he turned to a technician standing at one of the control stations. "Explain this malfunction, now!" The technician was a Morvathi named Yvrin. She was thin and elegant, with skin that glowed faintly purple and large eyes that seemed to look right through whatever they focused on. Her fingers danced over her control panel as she ran diagnostic after diagnostic. "It is not a malfunction, Commander," Yvrin said finally. Her voice was quiet but steady. "The scanner is operating perfectly." "Then explain the reading." Yvrin looked at Katie. Then she looked at Zelthos. When she spoke again, every word carried the weight of something impossible. "The scanner has simply never encountered readings like these before. It cannot calculate her threat classification because her potential exceeds the measurable scale." Zelthos stared at Katie. She stared back at him, still not understanding what was happening. "That is impossible," Zelthos said slowly. "She is human. Her species is soft, fragile. They live for barely a century and possess no natural weapons." "And yet," Yvrin projected Katie's biometric data into the air for all to see. "The scanner asks one simple question, Commander. If this being decides to fight, what is the maximum threat they could pose? For this human, the scanner cannot determine an upper limit." The chamber fell silent. Katie Morgan stood in the center of the room, surrounded by warriors from 100 worlds, and waited to find out what happened next. The emergency lights still painted the chamber red as Commander Zelthos moved through the crowd of guards. He walked slowly, deliberately, his 4 arms folded behind his back. His golden eyes never left Katie's face. She remained where she was, hands at her sides, trying to look calm even though her heart was pounding. The guards had their weapons pointed at her from every angle. One wrong move and she would be dead before she hit the floor. "Everyone stand down," Zelthos commanded. "Lower your weapons." The guards hesitated. One of them, a massive Gorvian with skin like granite, stepped forward. "Commander, the scanner has never issued this warning. Protocol demands we neutralize the threat until—" "She is not a threat," Zelthos interrupted. "She is a student. And I will not have my academy fire upon an unarmed human who has done nothing wrong." He turned to face the guards. "I said stand down. That is an order." Slowly, reluctantly, the guards lowered their weapons. The emergency barriers retracted. The red lights faded back to normal, but the tension in the room remained thick enough to cut. Zelthos approached Katie until he was standing just a few feet away. Up close, he was even more intimidating. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, and his blue scales seemed to shimmer with barely contained power. "You are Katie Morgan," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, Commander." "Tell me about yourself." Katie blinked. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Your training, your background, how you came to be selected for this program." She shrugged helplessly. "There is not much to tell. I was a park ranger in Montana. That is a region on Earth with mountains and forests. I spent most of my time hiking, tracking wildlife, dealing with emergencies when hikers got lost or injured. I have basic combat training, the kind all rangers receive, but I have never been in a real fight. Not once." Zelthos studied her for a long moment. "You have no military experience?" "No." "No formal martial arts training?" "Just the basics they taught us in Ranger School? And yet the scanner cannot calculate your threat level." Zelthos turned to look at Yivren, who was still analyzing the data at her station. "Technician, explain the scanner's methodology." Yivren stepped away from her console and addressed the room. Her purple eyes glowed softly as she spoke. "The scanner does not simply measure physical capability," she explained. "Any basic medical device can do that. What makes our scanner unique is its ability to calculate potential. It analyzes muscle density, bone structure, reflexes, and neural pathways. But it also measures psychological factors: stress response, adrenaline capacity, pain tolerance, determination." She gestured at the holographic display, which still showed Katie's readings. "Most species have natural limits. When they experience enough pain, their bodies force them to stop fighting. When they face overwhelming odds, their survival instincts trigger retreat. These limits are hardwired into their biology. The scanner uses these limits to calculate the maximum threat any individual could pose under the most extreme circumstances." "And the human?" Zelthos asked. Yivren took a deep breath. "The human has no detectable limits." A ripple of disbelief passed through the watching aliens. Several of them laughed, though the sound was nervous rather than mocking. "That is absurd," said one of the Kethvari instructors, a younger warrior with darker scales than Zelthos. "Every species has limits. It is simple biology." "I agree," Yivren replied, "and yet the data is clear. Her adrenaline response capacity exceeds our scale. Her pain tolerance threshold appears to be entirely psychological rather than physical. Under extreme stress, her muscles can recruit approximately 300% of their baseline output." 300%? The instructor shook his head. "That would tear her own body apart." "Yes, and yet the scanner indicates she would continue fighting even as her muscles tore and her bones fractured. Her brain is capable of overriding every survival instinct, every warning signal, every biological safeguard that would normally force cessation of combat." Yivren paused. "The scanner cannot calculate an upper limit because for this human, there does not appear to be one." Silence fell over the chamber once again. Katie felt strange hearing all of this. She did not feel special. She did not feel like some kind of unstoppable warrior. She felt like a park ranger who had wandered into a situation way over her head. "I do not understand," she said quietly. "I am not a fighter. I have never even thrown a real punch." Zelthos turned back to her. His expression was unreadable. "That may be true, but the scanner does not measure what you have done. It measures what you are capable of doing." He paused. "Tell me something, human. Have you ever been in a situation where you were afraid for your life?" Katie thought about it. "Yes, a few times. There was a grizzly bear once when I was alone in the back country, and a flash flood that caught me by surprise in a canyon." "What did you do?" "I survived." "How?" She frowned, trying to remember. "I do not know exactly. The bear charged me and I just did not run. Everyone says you should not run from a bear, but most people cannot help it. I stood my ground, made myself look big, and shouted until it backed off. The flood? She shook her head. I held onto a rock for almost an hour while the water tried to pull me under. I should have let go. My arms were screaming, but I just kept holding on. Zelthos nodded slowly. Because you decided you were not going to die. I guess so. That is what the scanner sees. Zelthos stepped back and addressed the room. This human is not a threat to the Academy. She is not a danger to anyone here. But she is an anomaly. And anomalies must be studied, understood, and trained properly. He looked at the other instructors. She will not be placed in the standard program. She will train with me. Personally. The younger Kethvari instructor stepped forward. Commander, with respect, that is unprecedented. You have not taken a personal student in over 50 years. Then it is time I took another. Zelthos looked at Katie. You will report to my training hall at dawn tomorrow. Do not be late. Katie nodded. Yes, Commander. As the crowd began to disperse, Yvrin approached Katie quietly. The Morvathi technician looked at her with something that might have been wonder or might have been fear. I have studied many species, Yvrin said softly. I have seen warriors who could crush stone with their bare hands. I have seen hunters who could track prey across light years. But I have never seen readings like yours. Katie did not know what to say. I really am just a park ranger. Yvrin smiled faintly. Perhaps that is what makes your species so remarkable. You do not even realize what you are. She turned and walked away, leaving Katie alone in the center of the chamber. The scanner orb floated nearby, its light dimmed back to silver. It hummed quietly, almost as if it were thinking. Katie looked at it for a long moment. What did you see? She whispered. The scanner did not answer. But somewhere deep in its programming, the warning still flashed in endless loops, burned into its memory circuits forever. Do not engage. 6 months passed faster than Katie expected. Every day brought new challenges, new lessons, and new ways to push her body beyond what she thought possible. Commander Zelthos was a demanding teacher. He woke her before dawn and trained her until long after the moons rose. He taught her the fighting styles of a dozen different species. He drilled her in weapons she had never seen before and tactics that seemed impossible at first glance. And she absorbed it all. That was the part that surprised everyone, including Katie herself. Techniques that took Kethvari children decades to master, she learned in weeks. Movements that required years of muscle memory became natural to her within days. It was as if her body had been waiting her entire life to learn these things, and was making up for lost time. The other human trainees progressed as well. Danny Marsh climbed from Tier 6 to Tier 4, an improvement that the instructors called remarkable. Lisa Cortez reached Tier 3, the highest any human had achieved before Katie's arrival. But Katie was something else entirely. The instructors stopped trying to classify her after the 3rd month. The scanner refused to give any reading other than the same warning it had displayed on her first day. She trained alongside Tier 1 warriors, the elite of the entire coalition, and she kept up with them. Sometimes she surpassed them. Not everyone was happy about this. Vethral was Commander Zelthos' nephew, a young Kethvari warrior who had been groomed from birth to carry on his family's legacy. His family had produced the greatest blade masters in coalition history. Their techniques had been refined over 2,000 years. And now a human, a soft creature from a primitive world, was learning in months what his ancestors had spent centuries perfecting. He watched Katie train every day, and every day his resentment grew. It finally boiled over during a routine demonstration session. The hall was packed with observers from across the coalition, Representatives from military commands, diplomatic corps, and scientific institutions had all come to see the human anomaly with their own eyes. Katie stood in the center of the training floor, sparring with one of the Tier 2 instructors. She moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for someone who had only been training for half a year. Her strikes were precise. Her defenses were flawless. When the instructor finally conceded the match, the crowd murmured with reluctant approval. That was when Vetheral stepped forward. He walked onto the training floor without permission, drawing his ceremonial blade as he moved. The weapon was beautiful and deadly, forged from an alloy that could cut through starship hulls. Its edge gleamed like frozen lightning. "I challenge the human," Vetheral announced, his voice carrying across the silent hall. Commander Zelthos rose from his observation seat. "Nephew, stand down!" "I will not." Vetheral pointed his blade at Katie. "This creature has made a mockery of our traditions. She learns our sacred techniques as if they were simple games. She walks among Tier 1 warriors as if she belongs there." He spat on the floor. "She does not. She is a fraud, a mistake of the scanner, and I will prove it." "This is not a formal challenge arena," Zelthos said coldly. "You have no right. I claim the right of blood legacy." Vetheral's eyes blazed. "Our ancestors fought to establish the blade traditions. I invoke their memory to test this outsider's worth." A heavy silence fell over the hall. Katie did not fully understand the traditions being invoked, but she could see from the expressions around her that Vetheral had just done something significant, something that could not be easily dismissed. Zelthos closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his expression was hard as stone. "If you do this, nephew, I cannot protect you from the consequences. I need no protection from a human." Every scanner in the room activated at once. Every single one displayed the same warning. "Do not engage. Do not engage. Do not engage." Vetheral ignored them. He lunged. Katie had never seen anything move so fast. Vetheral was a blur of scales and steel, his blade singing through the air like a living thing. The strike was aimed at her throat, a killing blow. He was not holding back. Time seemed to slow. Katie felt her heart rate spike. She felt adrenaline flood her system, sharpening her senses until she could see every detail of the blade as it approached. She could dodge. She could try to block. She could do any number of things that her training had prepared her for. Instead, she raised her bare hands and caught the blade between her palms. The metal bit into her flesh. Blood welled up immediately, running down her wrists and dripping onto the floor. The pain was immediate and intense, a burning fire that raced up her arms and screamed at her to let go. She did not let go. Vetheral stared at her, his golden eyes wide with disbelief. He tried to pull the blade back. It did not move. He tried to push it forward, to complete the killing stroke. It did not move. Katie looked at him. Her expression was calm, almost peaceful, despite the blood running down her arms. "I felt that," she said quietly. "I just decided it was not going to stop me." Then she squeezed. The blade shattered. It was not supposed to be possible. The alloy was designed to withstand temperatures that could melt steel. It was tested against plasma cutters and industrial lasers. It had been forged to last for centuries, and it shattered in Katie's bare hands like cheap glass. Vetheral stumbled backward, staring at the broken hilt in his grip. Fragments of the blade scattered across the floor, glittering in the light. The hall was utterly silent. Katie opened her hands and let the remaining pieces fall. Her palms were torn and bloody, the cuts deep enough to show glimpses of bone. She looked at them with something like curiosity, as if they belonged to someone else. "I think I need a medic," she said calmly. Two medical technicians rushed forward, their equipment already scanning her injuries. But every eye in the room remained fixed on the broken blade on the floor. Commander Zelthos walked slowly onto the training floor. He looked at his nephew, who was still frozen in shock. Then he looked at Katie. "Do you understand what you just did?" he asked quietly. "I stopped his blade." "You did more than that." Zelthos bent down and picked up one of the blade fragments. "This alloy is sacred to my people. It has been used by my family for 2,000 years. No one has ever broken it with their bare hands." He straightened and met her eyes. "No one, not from any species, not in the entire history of the Coalition." Katie did not know what to say. "I am sorry about the blade." Zelthos stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the silent hall. The other aliens looked at each other in confusion. No one had ever heard Commander Zelthos laugh. "You are sorry about the blade," he repeated. "Human. You just proved that your species is capable of things we never imagined possible, and you are sorry about the blade." He placed one of his 4 hands on her shoulder. "Come, let us get you to the medical bay, and then we need to have a very long conversation about what humanity really is." The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of healing equipment. Katie sat on a treatment table while Yvren carefully tended to her wounds. The cuts on her palms were deep, but the regeneration technology was already doing its work. In a few hours, there would be nothing left but faint scars. "You should have required immediate surgery," Yvren said, shaking her head in wonder. "The blade went nearly to the bone. You severed tendons and blood vessels. By every medical standard I know, you should have been in shock on the floor." "It hurt," Katie admitted, "but I could not let go. Not while he was still trying to push it through." "That is precisely what I mean." Yvren finished applying the final bandage and stepped back. "Your body sent you every possible warning signal: pain, blood loss, tissue damage. Every biological alarm was telling you to release the blade and protect yourself, and you simply ignored them." Katie shrugged. "I guess I am stubborn." "No." Yvren's purple eyes glowed softly. "It is more than stubbornness. I have been researching your species since you arrived. I have studied your history, your biology, your evolution, and I believe I finally understand what the scanner saw on your first day." Before Katie could respond, the door to the medical bay slid open. Commander Zelthos entered, followed by several senior members of the Academy staff. They arranged themselves around the room, their expressions ranging from curiosity to something approaching respect. "Technician Yvren has prepared a briefing," Zelthos announced. "I believe it is time we all understood exactly what we are dealing with." Yvren activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. An image of Earth appeared, a blue and green sphere spinning slowly in the darkness of space. "This is the human homeworld," Yvren began. "When we first made contact with humanity, we classified it as a standard life-bearing planet. Unremarkable by galactic standards, we expected its dominant species to be similarly unremarkable." She touched a control, and the image shifted to show various Earth environments: deserts, oceans, mountains, jungles. "We were wrong. Earth is not a standard planet. Earth is what our classification system designates as a Class 4 death world." A murmur ran through the assembled aliens. Several of them exchanged uneasy glances. "Class 4? One of them asked. "That is nearly the maximum rating." "Yes." Yvren highlighted various elements on the display. "Earth has active plate tectonics that generate earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. Its climate is unstable, varying from extreme heat to extreme cold. It hosts millions of species of disease-causing microorganisms that mutate faster than most immune systems can adapt. Its ecosystem contains apex predators in virtually every biome. Large portions of its surface are covered in water that is toxic to drink. Its star bombards the surface with radiation. Storms, floods, fires, and other natural disasters occur constantly. She paused to let this sink in. Most species that evolve on death worlds develop natural defenses: armor plating, venomous attacks, extreme speed or strength, heightened senses. Yvonne looked at Katie. Humans have none of these things. They are relatively small, slow, weak, and poorly equipped to survive in their own environment. And yet they did not merely survive. They became the dominant species on their entire planet. Commander Zeltos leaned forward. How? Through pure, relentless determination. Yvonne brought up images of human history. Primitive humans hunting mammoths with wooden spears, humans building cities in deserts, humans sailing across oceans in tiny wooden boats, humans climbing the highest mountains simply because they were there. Humans developed a unique evolutionary trait, Yvonne continued. Their minds can override their bodies. When faced with danger, most species are controlled by their instincts. They fight, flee, or freeze based on biological programming that cannot be consciously overwritten. Humans are different. Humans can choose to ignore pain. They can choose to suppress fear. They can choose to push their bodies far beyond safe limits when they decide that something is important enough. She highlighted a section of Katie's medical data. This is what the scanner detected on her first day. Her body has normal physical limits, just like any other human, but her mind has the ability to completely override those limits. She can tell her muscles to keep working even as they tear themselves apart. She can tell her heart to keep beating, even when her body is shutting down. She can look at certain death and simply decide that she refuses to die. The room was silent. This is not unique to her, Yvonne added. All humans possess this trait to some degree. We have reviewed the medical files of the other human trainees. They all show the same patterns, though less pronounced. Their species evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill them, and they survived by developing a level of mental control over their biology that we have never seen in any other species. Commander Zelthos stood and walked to the holographic display. He stared at the image of Earth for a long moment. We have fought wars against many species, he said finally. We have faced enemies with superior technology, superior numbers, superior strength. We have always found ways to win because we understood their limits. We could calculate how far they would push, how much they would sacrifice, when they would break and retreat. He turned to face Katie. Your species has no such limits. You will fight until your bodies literally cannot move, and sometimes, even then, you find ways to continue. Katie thought about the stories from human history, soldiers who crawled for miles with missing limbs to get help for their comrades, mothers who lifted cars off their trapped children, explorers who walked across frozen wastelands when all logic said they should have died. We are just regular people, she said quietly. We get scared. We feel pain. We have moments of weakness just like everyone else. Yes, Zeltos agreed. But when something matters enough to you, you can set all of that aside. You can decide that the fear and the pain and the weakness are simply not relevant. He paused. The scanner cannot calculate an upper limit for your potential because you can always choose to push a little harder, sacrifice a little more, hold on a little longer. There is no point at which your biology forces you to stop. Yvonne deactivated the display. We have been evaluating humans using the wrong criteria. We measured their strength, speed, and sensory capabilities. By those metrics, they are unremarkable. But those metrics miss the most important factor of all. What is that? Katie asked. Will. Yvonne looked at her with something like awe. The human will to survive, to protect, to overcome. It is unlike anything we have ever encountered. And we have been badly underestimating your species because of it. Commander Zelthos placed one of his hands on Katie's shoulder. You asked me once why you were selected for this program when you had no combat experience. I did not know the answer then. I know it now. Why? Because combat experience can be taught, skills can be developed, techniques can be mastered. He met her eyes. But what you have, what all humans have, cannot be taught. It cannot be measured. It cannot be replicated. It is simply part of who you are. He stepped back and looked at the other aliens in the room. Spread the word to the other academies. Spread it to the military commands, the diplomatic corps, every institution in the coalition. We need to revise our entire understanding of humanity. He glanced back at Katie. They are not the fragile species we thought they were. They are something far more remarkable and far more dangerous. 1 year had passed since Katie Morgan first stepped off the transport shuttle onto Verith Prime. 1 year of training, of learning, of proving herself against warriors who had spent their entire lives mastering combat. 1 year of changing everything the Coalition thought they knew about humanity. Now she stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Coalition, surrounded by representatives from over 100 worlds. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow far above. Floating platforms held delegates from species that had traveled across galaxies to be here. Holographic screens broadcast the ceremony to billions of beings across the known universe. Behind Katie stood the other 11 humans from the original program. All of them had earned rankings that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Danny Marsh was now Tier 2, a classification that most species took generations to achieve. Lisa Cortez had reached Tier 1, making her one of the elite warriors of the entire coalition. The others had made similar progress, each of them shattering expectations about what humans could accomplish. But today was about Katie. High Chancellor Verithus, an ancient being whose species had helped found the coalition 10,000 years ago, floated at the center of the assembly on a platform of pure light. Their form was difficult to look at directly, shifting between shapes that the human mind struggled to process. "We are gathered here to witness something historic," Verithus announced, their voice somehow audible to every being in the chamber without seeming to grow louder. For the first time, a human has achieved Tier 1 combat certification through the standard assessment process. This achievement was considered impossible when the human integration program began. Many doubted that it could ever happen. Katie felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. Some still held skepticism, others held curiosity, but many now held something new, something that looked like respect. "Katie Morgan of Earth," Verithus continued, "please step forward." She walked across the polished floor until she stood before the High Chancellor's platform. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. "You have demonstrated exceptional skill in 17 different combat disciplines. You have defeated opponents from 32 different species in sanctioned matches. You have shown tactical intelligence, adaptive learning capabilities, and physical prowess that rivals the greatest warriors our coalition has produced." Verithus paused. "But more than any of these accomplishments, you have shown us something we had forgotten. You have shown us what true determination looks like." Commander Zelthos stepped forward, carrying a small box made of dark metal. He opened it to reveal a pin about the size of Katie's thumbnail. It was made of the same alloy as the blade she had shattered, forged into the symbol of the Coalition's Tier 1 warriors. "I have trained warriors for 200 years, Zelthos said, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "I have worked with the most talented individuals from across the galaxy. I have never trained anyone like you." He lifted the pin from the box. "And I have never been more grateful that your species chose to be our allies rather than our enemies." He pinned the insignia to Katie's uniform. The small click seemed to echo in the vast space. "Rise, Tier 1 warrior Katie Morgan," Verithus intoned. You have earned your place among the greatest fighters the Coalition has ever known." The assembly erupted into applause. Beings from 100 different worlds, many of whom had laughed at the idea of human warriors just 1 year ago, now stood and acknowledged her achievement. The sound rolled through the chamber like thunder, wave after wave of recognition and respect. Katie turned to face the assembly. She saw Danny and Lisa and the other humans clapping harder than anyone else, their faces glowing with pride. She saw Yevren in the crowd, the Morvathi technician who had first discovered the truth about human potential. She saw Vethral standing near the back, his expression complicated but no longer hostile. He had apologized to her 3 months ago, and they had become something like friends. She had come so far from the park ranger in Montana, who had never been in a real fight. After the ceremony, there was a reception where delegates from across the coalition approached her to offer congratulations. Some wanted to shake her hand. Others simply wanted to see her up close, to study the being whose readings had broken their most advanced scanner. One conversation stood out from the rest. A delegation from a small world called Methys Prime approached her near the end of the evening. Their species was delicate and slight, with translucent skin and large dark eyes. They had been conquered by a neighboring empire 50 years ago and had only recently regained their independence. "We watched your assessment video," the delegation leader said quietly. "The moment when the scanner could not calculate your limits. We have watched it many times since then." "Why?" Katie asked. "Because it gave us hope." The leader's voice trembled slightly. "For 50 years we were told that we were too weak to resist, that our biology made us incapable of fighting back. We believed it. We accepted our fate." They looked up at her with those large, dark eyes. "Then we saw you, a being with no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities, and yet you refused to be limited by your biology. You showed us that will can overcome what the body cannot." Katie did not know what to say. She had never thought of herself as an inspiration. "Our young people speak of you constantly now," the leader continued. "They train harder. They push themselves further. They have stopped accepting that they cannot succeed simply because they were born into fragile bodies." A small smile crossed their delicate features. "You have given us something priceless. You have given us belief in ourselves." As the evening wound down, Katie found herself standing alone on a balcony overlooking the assembly grounds. The moons of Vareth Prime hung in the sky, casting silver light across the alien landscape. Commander Zeltos joined her after a few minutes. "You seem troubled," he observed. "Not troubled." She shook her head slowly. "Just thinking. A year ago I was nobody special. A park ranger from a small town. I had never been in a real fight. I did not even know what I was capable of. And now? Now I understand." She turned to face him. "It is not about what I can do. It is about what any human can do when they decide something matters enough. We are all capable of pushing past our limits. We just do not realize it until we are tested." Zeltos nodded. "That is the truth of your species. You are not warriors by nature. You do not seek conflict. But when something matters enough to you, when you decide that failure is not an option, you become something that even our scanners cannot measure." Katie looked back up at the moons. "I hope we never have to prove just how far we can go. I hope the Coalition stays at peace for 1,000 years." "As do I." Zeltos placed one of his hands on her shoulder. "But if war ever comes, I am glad that humans will be standing beside us rather than against us." She smiled. "We are humans, Commander. We do not like fighting. But when we have to, when something matters enough, we simply do not know how to stop." The scanner at her hip remained silent. It had long since stopped trying to calculate her threat level. Some things it had learned could not be measured with technology and data. Some things simply had to be witnessed to be believed. and humanity was only just beginning to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of.